Welcome to the LY show, the Waiting Out COVID-19 series. I'm Liying. On this episode, we continue to talk to people about how they've been coping with this pandemic and how their lives have been affected. Today, we are very glad to have Yousef joining us from Switzerland. Hi, Yousef.
Hello.
So, where are you right now?
So I'm now in Switzerland in the southern part. It's a very close area to Italy. So, for example, we have one of the famous cities in Italy, like Como. It's like 10 minutes. So we're like right on the border. It's
Right
very
at the
close.
border.
Like 10 minutes, you're in Italy. You're 15 minutes, you're in Italy. So it's very close. And Milan is really just 40 minutes away. So yeah, I'm very close to Italy, in the southern part of Switzerland.
Are you practicing social distancing now?
I am. Now the good thing is Switzerland by nature is somehow socially distanced, meaning people, you don't see many people actively going out. Only maybe the young people that you see actively going out, but especially on Saturday night, Friday night. But other than that, really, the population is not much. The life definitely been affected, but not in a way that is, you compare it to Milan, for example, because Milan is a congested, city. It's not like here, but I'm definitely doing that now once we go to the supermarket. So you have to keep a distance between you and the others. And inside even, they allow a specific number to enter the supermarket, and then till they finish, they bring more in. So definitely there is effect in that regard. Yeah, there is some social distancing happening, and I don't see my friends anymore who live in Italy. So most of my friends that I go to and I go out with, they're living in Como and Varese, which is like the closest two cities of Italy to us. And currently I cannot just cross the border and go to the Lombardia, which is like the most affected area in Italy. So in that regard, that's the social distancing that really, for me, was the biggest hit for me, like not going to Italy anymore because most of my friends are living there.
So before the virus, how often did you go to Italy?
Very often, actually, like at least 3 times a week, or 4 times a week, because going to Italy even for dinner or lunch is very convenient, because because it's half the price, right? And it is as good. Italian food is very good, so it's super good. It's half the price. Then going out, we never go out in Switzerland. Like, we don't do that. We just go out in Italy because it's cheaper and it's the same quality for drinks, etc. So yeah.
It's unbelievable. Going out means going to another country.
Yeah, but it actually makes a lot of sense if you think about it. I've been trying to move to Italy. So most of the people who have the option, they actually don't live in Switzerland. They actually live in Italy, because but like, for example, if I'm coming from Palestine, I'm not a European, so I cannot get the cross-border permit. But for example, if you're French, if you're German, you can easily get the cross-border. So why not getting a Swiss salary and paying, much less like rentals? So people usually live in Italy in the most.
Yeah. Okay. So when was the last time you were in Italy?
Last time, it's been. I cannot remember exactly. It was between 50 and 60 days. That was the last time I've been. So
Until 60
yeah,
days ago.
yes. So I mean, I
Uh-huh.
remember it was the starting of closing out, and it was not really in Switzerland. There were like 2 or 3 cases announced, and it was not like a big deal. So at that time, they told us they were giving us the option, like if you want to come to office, you're welcome to, but if you want to stay home, that's fine. So it was like optional kind of deal. So at that time, I went to visit one of my friends who we were staying at home, and we felt bored after maybe 1 week or 2 weeks. So we went out for some food in Varese in Italy, and then, but that was like 50 days ago.
Wow. Okay. And
Yeah.
are you working from home now?
Yeah, now I'm working from home. I think I'm privileged really to have the option, and also I'm privileged that I've tried this, kind of work from home before, so it doesn't feel weird. It doesn't affect my, performance, because I did it before coming to Switzerland. I was doing it 50% for continuous 4 years. So in a way, I'm used to the idea of sitting home and working, etc., the virtual meeting, etc., and all that. So yeah, so all my work now online.
And how's the situation in Switzerland or in your city in particular in terms of the virus?
It's not hitting very much here. Like in my city, in my canton, like Ticino, it's hitting hard because so if you look at the map, there's 3 areas that is affected the most, which is the borderline with France, and the borderline with Germany, and the border with Italy. So these 3 areas, like, they have the most, and that makes sense because, I mean, the first cases that got in here were, coming from Milan. So my city is having a hit, but it's not so bad. It's not so light. It's like medium kind of thing.
Do people take precautions in your city?
They do. I mean, the people really, I mean, they're very taking it very seriously. And I mean, the government themselves, they're not, they're not putting so much like harsh rules. Like, for example, it's not like I heard in some cities, like, for example, Cyprus or Turkey, they're telling them not to even go outside. There's some time that you're not allowed even to go out at all. But that's not the case here. You can go out anytime you want. But there are some activities. It's a really nice environment for outdoor activities, like hiking, etc. It's mountainy as any part of Switzerland. And the only thing they were, like, for example, telling the people not to do is not to go on hikes. And at first, I didn't understand why you don't want me to go on a hike. It's especially that when you go on a hike, you don't see anyone. Like, you literally don't see anyone. But they said, like, no, but we want to avoid injuries, because at that time you will go to like high intensive unit. Exactly. And they want to save that spots for the coronavirus, because if you can avoid it and you don't go out, then there's no potential way of injury. But if you go, and maybe it counts for a good number, because many people really go out. It's a very famous area for coming here and biking outside and hike, etc. So maybe there is some counts there or numbers that they actually get injuries on like regular basis. So that's the one thing that they told us not to do. I think people sticking to that. I don't see much people really hiking or in a hiking costume going out, etc. And also, once you go to the supermarket, etc., everyone is really keeping a distance, and they also, you need to hygiene your like hands before entering, etc. And everyone's sticking to that really. So yeah, I would say people really following strictly the recommendations, even more like from the people's side, because the government, as I said, they didn't put really like extreme measurements, right? So they put some recommendations, and I think the people is following it as they should.
And how long do you have to practice social distancing in Switzerland in general, since people are, following the rules?
Yeah. You mean for how long, or?
Yeah, how longer?
I honestly don't know. I mean, what they told us is really that start doing this, you're not allowed to go to, for example, the office. For now, we're not allowed to go to till further notice, right? Now, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know. But based on what I read on internet, like, there's like a big peak, then it goes down, then it goes bounces, like with the small peaks over time. So, I mean, for Switzerland, it was for the last, like, the highest hit was between 1,100 like a day, or 1,000, etc. Now it's 500 a day, more or less. It's around that number. So I would say it started to the peak to go down. But I think maybe there is some, I would say there is some hope of going back to slowly to a plan of, working normally, slowly in June. Kind of, that's what I've heard, but still, it's not clear really what is gonna happen.
All right. Do you also follow the news on COVID-19 in your own country?
I do. I mean, I do read the the normal news about I basically follow the statistics mainly, and I just see and compare like why this is happening here, why it's here. For example, I noticed some higher deaths, for example, in Spain and Italy, and I was curious, like, what's going on there? Why the death rate is higher? Why, if you compare it to Switzerland or Germany, it's in Italy it's like 10%, which is very high. But if you compare it to Germany or Switzerland, it's like 2%. So this kind of news I follow, and I just follow also like on numbers. Like there's 3 areas I follow in the news regularly. It's Italy for sure, because most of my friends are there, and they affected that, and also Switzerland because I'm living here, and Palestine, and because my family is there. So I mainly follow news on these 3 countries. Like what's happening, how's the numbers, is there hope or should have lights of improvement, etc. But yeah, that's the kind of news I follow on COVID.
How's your family doing back home?
They're fine. I mean, they live in a small village, like my parents, but my my siblings, they're living in the bigger cities. So in the small areas, like small, there's not much really of a contact, generally speaking. So it's been okay. It's been quiet. There are no cases recorded there, and the cities themselves is not terrible really, because I think the most was affected is Bethlehem, which my family doesn't live there, and they just did a siege there quickly to isolate people in Bethlehem, so it didn't spread hard. And in Ramallah, there's few cases, etc. So in general, they're fine, really. And till now, I think maybe there's 260. And the government closed everything very quickly. So I think that also contained it from spreading. So they've been fine. And I think if it kept like that way, hopefully they get to control it very quickly.
All right. So when was the first time you heard about the coronavirus?
Uh, I heard. I mean, I heard about it when it was really in China mainly.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I didn't have that interest because I always hear, you always hear that news about like bird flu, Ebola, and it always seems distant and doesn't come to you, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, yeah, this is another news of something going on there. Okay, that's fine. I mean, it hasn't been really much of interest till it started to, outbreak in other areas really quickly. So it sounded like this is a small thing that it will last for a couple of months and vanish. Like you hear in the news, like there's a big about something, they're talking about something new, and then it vanishes. So this is what I expected, or there's no much talk about it, and then started really to get more attention when it started in Italy. So in Italy was really a hard hit, especially in Milan. Like were many cases discovered on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, first I heard about the news in China. That was the first time I heard about this.
Mm-hmm. Do you know anyone personally that gets impacted?
No,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I mean, I've seen some people that I like back home. Even the number is very low, but I've seen some people that I know they're part of this family, but not personally. Like I didn't have a bond with them. I don't have, any kind of personal interaction with them. So no, I have not.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you've been comparing the death rate in different countries.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your analysis?
I mean, when I read about Italy, they say no surprise because they have really like the highest rate of older people in Europe, and I've heard like what I read, they're saying even it's like the second in the world after Japan. So and most of the people there um, they usually have some health conditions like asthma or something like that, and that made sense. It's like now once you look, that's another news that is weird that I read is like in USA, like the death rate of black people is higher than the white,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, once you hear this, you come to say, okay, that's weird. Why does it affect really based on the skin color, which doesn't make sense? But then when you look more, you understand it's because there is like the way that they live there, like in the black community, and the healthcare that they get, etc. So there's something going on. It's not about black or white. It's about them not getting really maybe the right attention or the right services over a long period of time, not now, but over the last time, 10, 20, 30 years, that they made their overall health situation is not as strong, and they're not able to cope up, with this disease. So that's another thing. But that's what I've read, really. It's not my only analysis, but that's what I've read on internet and news places.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, what about people in Switzerland? Are they generally positive about the situation?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, what I like about Swiss people is they're super, they're pragmatic in a way. Like they don't freak out, right? So, for example, I know some friends in Milan, for example, and they showed me pictures of empty shelves, like there's nothing to buy. Even the water, even though the tap water is drinkable, like why you're buying even water. So, but here they're really not. They're just following the orders, but they're not freaking out, right? So you find people outside talking, like, because now it's, I think the spring started, you know, the sun is like 15 to 20, so it's very good to go outside. And the people, they go out, okay, and you find maybe a group of 4 or 5 people talking, but really they're keeping, you know, a distance, like there's like a meter and a half between each one, and they're just talking away from each other's. And even the supermarket, the stock is really always available. I didn't notice anything like it's less or people freaking out, or everyone, once you see people shopping on the weekend, you know, they seem to be buying, you know, normal and reasonable amount of food, etc. And also, I think because also the government declared that they had a plan or they had, you know, support, etc. So they also talk to the people that do not to freak out, and I think there's a lot of trust between the people and the government. So what the government announced is like they're putting like 50 billion euros to support small businesses that they shut down. So any small business, like even gems, even like anyone that who was selling and now not selling, they're giving him money. Even my company, which is didn't shut down completely, the government now is paying us like 1 day, and that day we're not working, so they give us an extra day off, and the government is paying for that. So this kind of actions makes you feel comfortable, etc., that the government has a plan, they're pragmatic, they're dealing with it. And that, I think that message from the government and the support, financial support, etc., even that they went out once this started and they told everyone, even if we shut down all the borders, which they did not do, we can have like a supply of food enough for everyone for the, you know, the coming 4 or 5 months. So I think all these positive messages and you know, pragmatic way of dealing with the situation had put everyone you know, in a positive mode. They're just positive about it. They're just dealing with it pragmatically, you know, taking it as is. And until now, I think the number of infections on a daily basis is, you know, till now I think the hospitals, they're still taking care of that. I have not heard that they're super overwhelmed. Definitely, it's more work to them than it has been always, but it's not going crazy or out of control. So I think, yeah, generally, the government, the people, they have been very positive about it, and they've been dealing with it as is, following the rules, etc., but not with, you know, shutting down everything in an aggressive way.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have lived there for 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, like, because this is really refreshing, because we don't hear a lot of positive things about, you know, like what you said. So
Yeah.
you've lived there for 2 years. Is this, you know, surprising, or is like you expect it to be like this?
No, I expected that. I mean, you know, people have this vibe of, you know, they're just people in Switzerland. They're very practical, right? So they're not. They're very practical, like to an extreme way. They're very practical, and they just deal with it as you know, as a problem. There's steps to solve it. That's it. No freaking out. No going crazy. And I think, you know, the financial status of the government and the people is helping out as well. So all that support, financial support, and also. I mean, there is not much people like in Switzerland. It's not a congested area. It's like when you look, the houses are separated already, and people are, you know, living. You know, they respect their privacy a lot. It's not like you find it that there's a lot of, you know, of people in the street, etc. So this is maybe why, like, it's this whole situation did not like flip, the situation 180 degrees. It did not. It's just an extra cautious steps that been introduced, but in a way like this social distancing or having the privacy of your own is something embedded in here. I think it's maybe more like Sweden as well. Like they didn't do much to change there. If you know, I mean, they didn't even impose any kind of rules because people are socially distanced anyway. They respect that already. So maybe it's just an extra step of sanitizing and just you wash your hands, etc. But that's it. That what it takes, because this is like in a way is the way they live, right? So it's the same here. Like this is maybe what really helped a lot is that kind of lifestyle that they live. Also, as I said, the financial state of the government, their plans, their confidence of making sure that everyone is having what they want. Also here, like now, if I don't want to go out and buy, if I'm afraid to do that, there's numbers I can call. They can bring me whatever I want to home. So all that of stuff, and just it's just very positive. Like you say, okay, there's nothing to worry about for me. The government is paying for me. I can get food even at home if I don't want to go out. People already respecting that, and it's not a congested area that if you go out and you will bump into many people. So all these circumstances really made it easy maybe to cope up with in terms of changing your lifestyle, because it is the lifestyle, yet in a way you're living in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm. So apart from that, do people take any other precautions?
No, I think that's it. I mean, mainly, people are now is just very, you see people like extra cautious in the supermarket. That's what I notice. And probably because you go and you shop, you touch stuff and you just leave it. So that's where people are really very cautious. And before you enter, you have to like disinfect your hands, etc., with someone sitting outside doing that for you. Like that's the most thing really I've noticed in a way that they care. And also the public transportation really have decreased a lot, even though, even before coronavirus, if I get in a train in Swiss, usually I have the other three seats empty around me. Like that's in a normal situation, like there is nothing going on. But now even I think I have not used the public transportation since maybe 2 months or so. But you notice there's not much people using it, and you notice like an increased use of private cars. So people are using their cars, etc., more often than before. So yeah, that's the main thing I've noticed really easily. Like you can easily notice with the how the people is dealing with it.
So for the current cases that got infected, does Switzerland have, sufficient medical staff or facilities to deal with that?
Yeah, but I've heard also that they borrowed or they took some units that they were for military use, something like that. So that indicates maybe they don't, I don't think so any country is really prepared for, such an increased number of patients on daily basis. So I think in a way they're coping up with it, but I think they're using also some units that they were actually for military use and care. They're probably using it now for that purpose for people.
All right. So do you follow the news on some, hard-hit areas apart from Italy, Palestine, and Switzerland, even though it's not hit hard?
Yeah, I follow up on US because it's been really shocking. I mean, I expected it to be really crazy because you're talking about a continent. It's not a small country. It's really a big, huge country, and the way that their government been dealing with it was somehow odd. I think they were doing a lot of balancing between how much it will affect the economy versus how it would affect people, and there was a lot of false kind of messages going out. I would say not responsible. So I was curious, like what would happen after that, because the messages were very not cautious to the people, and they were not very, in a way they didn't lock down quickly, etc. And you were hearing really very positive messages that you cannot relate to, like, okay, we're in Easter, we're coming back normally, like today we're Easter, so that doesn't make sense. And it was contradicting hearing what's in US and in the other countries. This is why it was an interest for me, like what would happen there, because apparently there's a lot of ignorance going on in a way. And I mean, if you notice, like the number there were crazy. So I'm just looking at the numbers, like, well, when would it start going down? Because I mean, you're talking about between 20, 25, 30,000 a day. So it's like crazy number in US. So yeah, I follow up on the US news. I followed up at some point with the Spain situation, because I think it's been one of the worst in terms of dealing, because they had also a lot of medical staff dying as well. So there has been many doctors dying, etc. And I've heard, like, in a situation, and I think now it crossed Italy, so they have cases more than Italy, and even the death rate and the health sector is weaker than Italy. I mean, Italy is very good. I mean, compared to other European countries, but Spain was bad. So I was also following, like, how would it be like with this not enhanced, weak medical situation there, and how would they cope up with this increased number? So that's it. And also I've been looking at neighboring countries to Palestine, like Jordan and Israel. So it was in Israel, there was an increased number of people getting infected. And, I believe Tel Aviv or any place in Israel, I think it's more exposed to tourism. So I think that's why they had much cases. And I know many, many Palestinians that they work inside Israel and they commute, like, on a weekly basis, etc. So I was monitoring that also. I would like to see how would that affect as well, because Palestine in a way is isolated, but you don't even have much tourism in it. And even the first cases that happened in Palestine were from some tourism going to Bethlehem for the Church of Nativity, etc. So I wanted to see how this situation of exchanging the work in between Palestine and Israel, how would it contribute to this in a way, and in a way also everyone were concerned, because I think there have been many cases where people brought more infections to their families from Tel Aviv or Israel to Palestine. So Israel was also one of the spots that I was also following up on the news and looking at the numbers and how many people and how the situation is going on there. So yeah, these, like, the countries I've been really closely following up. Also, I've been looking at the numbers of China, because it's been really a positive example to everyone of how they controlled it. And you just want to also look at how stable is that? And I think it's been pretty stable. Like you're getting 30 or 40 people infected every day, which is really small number of people. Also, I think one of the impressive thing really to have watched is how China dealt with that in terms of technology, etc., and how they used AI and the cameras to identify the faces of people who had that infection and determining who other also potentially could be infected. It's like a high tech. I think it's never been used anywhere else. Also with this policy new, I think I saw some, they're wearing some, I would say, I don't know, something like hats or something like police stuff that with a screening showing the temperature of others, etc., and potentially. So that kind of news were really impressive. Like I didn't expect that anyone has enough capabilities really to kind of use the robots, the AI, and the advanced technology to really control that. It was really impressive. That's one of the also kind of maybe section of the news as me being in high tech was interested in. Like I didn't know that they have the capability of really identifying people faces using AI with cameras, etc., in a very efficient way that you can even track the people that interacted with other people, etc. Because that's really it's a big dilemma, right? Because how would you, especially in a place like China, it's really full of people, like crazy number of people. Yeah, so that was impressive. That was really, really impressive. I didn't know anyone is like, prepared in a way to really cope up with this situation. I think, I mean, in many areas, like, for example, as I said, like Switzerland or Sweden, the way they live is already prepared in a way to cope up with this. But like in China, that was it was impressive, really impressive. How would they able to control that in a way? And I think, I mean, I read a lot that if we controlled like this epidemic, it would be the very first time in the human history that we actually controlled it, because it never happened before. And I think China in a way controlled it really. I mean, like having 80,000 in a whole country like China is just it's just impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. You came from a computer science background.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So when you look at this situation, like, does your professional, let's say, expertise, give you any particular perspective
I
when
see.
you think about the situation? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I not the computer science per se, but like the scientific approach of looking into, like, for example, I just like to see how how different scientific opinions really around it, not really computer science related, but like how would different people scientifically start talking about this. And I hear, I've seen this like model, what they call the hammer and the dance, like where there's like a big peak happens and it happens. It's impressive, like statistically speaking, it's, this pattern is the same everywhere. So you can actually predict after enough information from that country, if there's somehow a way to predict, I mean, to how long it will last, etc., how many people will get affected, etc. So for now, I think they already know how many people will get infected in US, how many people will die, even now. So that's impressive. Also, I was impressed by that, like this. I'm not sure if you heard, or read about it. It's called herd immunity. It's about how people get immune, etc., and how you need like 50 or 60% of people to get immune to get back to work. So you have enough people isolating that it's not becoming anymore, an outbreak or epidemic. So it was very interesting for me at the start to read about this and see like what possible ways that any country, and I just like to see how countries are dealing with it. Like, for example, I mean, Switzerland didn't shut any border at all, even though I was expecting it to do so. But I was thinking, like, why they're doing that? And of course, they're not stupid, right? I'm sure they have their reasons. Like, they didn't come next day. So once this happened in Italy, all of us were like, okay, someone will come from the Swiss government saying, we're shutting down all the borders, etc. But that's not what happened, really. They didn't shut any border till this moment. And I was just thinking, like, why they're doing that. And I think in a way, these even countries, especially countries that they can deal with the situation, they want people to get infected, but in an acceptable rate, okay? Because otherwise, if you don't have natural immunity to this, this is a disease can outbreak anytime, right? And if we can now have enough immunity to make it safe for people to go out again, then there's no point of like looking everyone and having like everyone gets completely like not infected. So getting infected in a way, in a reasonable rate that we can take care of them in hospitals is a very reasonable way also to get enough immunity for the people to be able to deal with the current situation, because otherwise you cannot just have everyone sitting home and having zero infections. I don't believe that's a success. A success probably is having enough people infected and immune to be able to go back to normal work. So you have enough people immune in the middle that they don't transmit. So yeah, so I like to see how governments are dealing with it, and I try to analyze like why they're doing this, etc. Like for example, in Palestine, they had like a really, really very aggressive shutdown, and I understand why as well, because they simply cannot deal with it. So like in all Palestine, there is like a 200 this like intensive care, like for breathing. I don't know what they call it, but just like 200 is a really low number. So they cannot deal with it simply. So this is why it was very aggressive shutdown. And I think for these countries that they cannot afford, they shut down, okay, we cannot deal with this. Maybe we just wait till some superpower find a vaccine or something like that. So I understand how I think, or I try to analyze like why this country deals with it differently, why this one differently, why this country shut down the border, why this does not shut down the border, etc. So I like just to look into that perspective, see how they're dealing with it.
So you mentioned that you were impressed by some of the measures or some, things that happened during this period of time. Okay, are there any things that disappoint you?
Disappoints me?
Yeah.
It's disappointing of how some. So, for example, like looking at my country, for example, it disappoints me how much people they're not able to evaluate the situation. And like they need to be socially distanced, which is a very effective way. It's cheap, it's effective. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't cost you money. Still, people, they're not taking it seriously in a way, and like government back home, they had to impose like in power and telling people not to go out, etc., and having this kind of stuff, while you would expect people really to understand. I mean, it's not complicated if you read about it. And one of the things that, I mean, that, this continuous use of like this only affect elders, like we should not in a way worry about it. That's so stupid, because I mean, there's many older people. I mean, there's no family literally that doesn't have older people. There's always older people, and just imposing that as a positive kind of news is stupid, and it's disappointing of how people actually took that to as an advantage, for them to leverage them going out, etc., without caring, because this doesn't affect me, it affects older people. So this kind of stuff and behavioral stuff that you would expect it to be to a better level of understanding was a bit disappointing, even from people that you think they're educated, they understand this, and yeah, just people not being able to understand the risks, because even with the current situation of coronavirus, I mean, there's a possibility that this can, you can produce new mutants of the virus itself that is stronger and more lethal. And just people need to understand that, these measures, shutting down, etc., is very important to control and to let the the medical units take care of the people without being overwhelmed. So that was very disappointing, really. And you saw this pattern like almost everywhere. Not everywhere literally, but you hear about this. So I've seen some videos about people like for example, responsible people in Italy, etc., going out and talking to the public in a way like, what the hell you're doing, like with that language, like what the hell you're doing, why you're going out, etc. And also it's the same back home. Like if you watch now, even I think US is a big example of that as well. Like people, they're not taking it seriously in a way. And I think last day there were like 2,000 deaths in one day for US, which is like maybe the biggest hit ever since the start of this pandemic. So yeah, that was very disappointing, really. Just coming back to, like many people said, like we expected to be living in moon in 2020, like we're just learning how to wash our hands. So it's like moving backward.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was disappointing, and also you wouldn't come to know much about this stuff unless it happened, because we're not part of the focused group of who, because there is focused group that I didn't know that they're actually always looking for an outbreak prevention, as they know that this would happen. Okay, so there is like a team that always goes to different places whenever there's a reported case of a disease. They go, they check, and etc., to see how it goes. And also, I've watched this TEDx lecture that Bill Gates had done like 5 years ago, and I mean, Bill Gates has entered this medical kind of thing like 10 or 15 years ago, where he started dealing with Ebola in Africa, etc., and he's been contributing to that. So he's been exposing himself to that kind of stuff. and all these people that were were in a way exposed or experts to this kind of stuff, they were expecting this to happen, and they were given warnings over and over to lectures to the government that there will be an outbreak. They don't know when. There will be, because that's always been the case. We have an outbreak now, we will have an outbreak another 100 or 50, 20 years, we don't know, but it always happens. And like we're not enough, prepared, etc. So that's kind of also a disappointment, right? Because you have these people that they always tell you that there's this going, and they're very confident and they know enough that this is something gonna happen, but no one is listening to them, etc. And instead, instead of having the focus on these people that they're important and they make a difference in your life, the focus is actually on like actors or football players or whatever. So that's kind of a disappointment. Just tells you how screwed up the world is, and how our priorities really messed up. Like how people like who work in art, or not in art but mainly in like football players, they're taking millions and billions of money, while researchers in medical they're taking really nothing almost. Even I know like people who does research, as you know as well, they take nothing. They're not the people who get paid the most. So like this brings all the situation, it brings all these things that you didn't think about in a normal day to the service, and you just start thinking about it, like why it is what it is right now in the world, that they don't take that seriously. And even though makes you also think about the continuous situation that happens, like in Africa, there is like millions of people die. They suffer, for example, Ebola was one of them. It was very lethal, but it was not, spreading in a way like through air, etc. So it didn't spread as much as coronavirus, but it makes you think as well, just to put yourself on their shoe. I mean, and think how much, maybe make you more empathetic, or do some, contribution in terms of donation, etc. now and then, even though, because you just, as I said, previously you just hear it as a news. It doesn't really mean much to you because it's not reaching you. But when it reaches you and takes like really small stuff in your life, you know how much it is really serious, and how, people who are dying in Africa, they're not only just numbers, and they're just, there's something that you can do really to at least contribute to do the right thing in a normal day. So, so anyway, yeah, I mean, all this just comes to mind and just makes you disappointed about maybe how also you were thinking before this was happening, because maybe you were not thinking in a way that is considered the right way. Yeah.
That's a lot of thinking. So
yeah.
What's the first thing you would like to do when it's all over?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, just in a way, I mean, there is some stuff maybe I don't want like to share it, but anyway. But anyway, I just
more intriguing.
I'll tell you the general way of how I think about it is, I'm a type of person who overthink. So I always overthink, and it takes me really so much time to take a decision about something, regardless of what it is. I'm just super cautious, and I'm extra cautious in a way that is, I think it's more than enough in a way, because you don't want it to be extreme as well. So the way I'm thinking out of it, of whatever I'm going to do is just to be less, not to overthink really, because really there's, I mean, we're living a short life in a way, and it's just overthinking is not healthy. So there's some decisions in my mind I have not been settled about it. So I think I'll just be less, I would say, like extra cautious about it, and just maybe take some decisions about some stuff. But yeah, that's one thing definitely, and definitely traveling as well, because like I always wait for the summer to go anyone, I think, just to visit a new city in Europe, or visit a new city in Italy, because there's many places I wanted to visit. I have not visited Venice yet, or Rome, so I definitely want to do that. And yeah, so yeah, there's some visiting I really would like to do. And the most important visiting that I want to do is really going back home, because I wanted to go back home in May, so specifically in 24th of May. So I was going to book my flight till this happened. So, and I choose that because you'll probably know the celebration after Ramadan. So that's the time. So that's the time back home at 24th of May, around that time. So I wanted to go back home where everyone is sitting down and just to connect with the people, because yeah, it's a lovely time to be home. It's a very lovely time to be home. And hopefully I can catch it. I mean, there's another celebration that comes in also July. So it's either May, which I don't believe so I can make it, and or July. So going back to Palestine, because I really would like to go back home. It's been a year, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, I think that's it. The only thing I would like really to share, and I think it's been positive for me, been very, very positive, that every day, and I'm just not being philosophical, but really practical about this, because every time you talk to someone, maybe they think, okay, this is just a positive talk. It's not. I think it's think about how many times you get the chance to stay with yourself for an extended amount of time. Almost, you will never give it to this chance again. And just being able to focus on yourself, because usually, for example, in this 2 months, I was able to completely quit smoking. So I was coming back and on, and that was fighting for the last 6-7 months to stop smoking. And I was not able to, even though, one of the biggest triggers for me is to smoke is being at home. So I don't smoke in the office, I smoke at home. So being at home all the time, I thought it's gonna be a really catastrophe for me, because I'm going to be smoking all the time. So just being home, focused on yourself without distraction, is just being, mindful of what you're doing is really, really positive thing. It really brings a lot of positivity. So one of the things that I'm proud of is I quit smoking. I don't think about it anymore. I don't smoke for the last 60 days. And I put like 1st of April was my like goal date, that if I reach that date without smoking, then I can consider myself, successful. So I reached that date, and I was happy that I was able to commit to that. And what made it really successful is the ability of not seeing anyone, not getting distracted, because you see many people smoke in the street, and maybe somehow you think this is okay, because people smoke a lot here, and generally in Europe, people smoke a lot. And it's been one of my biggest regrets, like why I do smoke. So just focus on yourself, put in some goals that you want to achieve, is be very mindful of them, maybe just writing them down and put in a goal date to do them, is really how it sounds simple, but it's really effective. And for example, for the first time in my life, I've been able to enjoy my own food, like cooking my own food and enjoy it. Because usually I cook it, okay, because I'm hungry and I just want to eat, and that's it. I don't spend much time really caring about how tasteful it is. But just putting you in this situation, you come to, I was at first doing some simple stuff, repetitive, etc. But at some point I felt like, okay, I need to improvise. And slowly I was able to do some cooking that I enjoy, in a way that in the future I would prefer my cooking other than going out. So that was really good as well. I didn't know I was able to do that as well. Also, I've been focusing on improving my Italian language, which is, I understand well, but I cannot speak very well. So also I put a date for that. It's a bit challenging, but also it's just make you mindful and just focus on positive changes in your life. So really, it's a great time. It's a great time for anyone just to focus on that and maybe do something that they really wanted to do in a life, since a long time, and they didn't have chance to because they're busy commuting to work, or they're busy, or they're getting distracted. Basically, I think that's the biggest thing. So yeah, that was the most positive thing that I wanted to share, really.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
All right, and take care. I hope you can go back home soon.
I hope so, hopefully.
Yeah. All right, I'll chat with you privately.
Okay, cool.
All right, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, ciao.
Yeah, bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.